I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, our daily look at an area high school football team and the key questions we're going to be answering about that team in our August 21st preseason preview here at Big Country Preps. Um, Again, Evan Wren. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona on vacation. My partner, Dan Youngblood, is coming live to us via Zoom in Angel Fire, New Mexico. He is on his vacation as well, so please pardon any kind of sound problems that we may experience here because we're in areas that the reception aren't the greatest. Anyway, Dan, we've got the Cisco Lobos to talk about today.
Yeah, talking about Cisco, one of the premier programs in the Big Country, one of the most consistent programs in the Big Country. Had a little bit of a down year last year, but even in their down year, 5-7 went 2 rounds deep in the playoffs, and they've got a pretty solid group back from that bunch. 15 of 23 lettermen return, including 6 offensive and 7 defensive starters. Got a very established system under Coach Kevin Stinnett. This is a program that I think you kind of pencil into the playoffs every year. I don't think this year will be any different. Obviously, they'll have some questions to answer if they hope to achieve the biggest goals they have for the year. And we'll talk about some of those here in a little bit. But looks like another good Cisco team.
All right. Before we get going on today's podcast, we want to remind you, YouTubers, to please hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button and then hit that little bell so that you'll get notifications each and every time that Big Country Preps comes up with a new video. And here's a quick thank you to a couple of our sponsors, beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, new or used, give Rob a shout at 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge.
With that, let's go ahead and jump in. I mentioned earlier that they did have a down season by Cisco standards, finishing 5-7. This is not a program accustomed to having losing seasons, but even in that losing season, like I said, went 2 rounds deep. Won a playoff game. This is a program that has a ton of history, high expectations every year. One of the first questions I have about it is with the experience they've got back, can they kind of get back to record-wise to kind of what we've expected to seeing from Cisco? I think that they're going to be a hard-nosed, competitive. They're going to fight. This is going to be a good physical football team. The question is, can they bounce back record-wise from what was a little bit of a down season for them?
All right. Now, last year, one of the problems with Cisco they had low numbers. They weren't the biggest Cisco team that we've seen. So my question this year, with limited size, because they're still not the biggest team on the block, can they get a push up front? And that is such a big key for Cisco. They're carrying on their tradition of controlling the ball, controlling the clock, etc. They need that push up front. This is not the biggest team that we've seen out of there. So will they get that push up front? And if they do, we'll see much more of the traditional Cisco type football team that we're accustomed to.
And the third question I have, and this is when we talked about, they've got some experience back. This is a pretty good nucleus back, but there aren't just a ton of established playmakers for them. I think that's going to be a big question. Who is going to emerge, particularly on offense, as some of those skill playmakers for them? Who are going to be the guys that are going to be, running the football, catching the football, throwing the football? I think they're going to have to establish some of those things going into the season. And if they can, I think they have an opportunity to kind of bounce back and be more of what we've kind of expect from Cisco. But that is going to be a question mark for them this year.
All right. With that, we're going to take a look at Cisco's schedule for 2024. We'll start with the non-district portion. They open with a home date against a good Clyde team on August the 30th. They'll travel to San Angelo to face San Angelo TLCA on the 6th of September. They host Breckenridge on the 13th. They travel to Coleman on the 20th, and then they host the Merkel Badgers on the 27th prior to an open date and jumping into districts.
Yeah, a good all Big Country non-district schedule for them gets them ready for their league schedule, which opens with a really tough game right off the bat, October 11th at Stanford. They follow that October 18th with a road date at Abilene TLCA before hosting Holly for a big game on the 25th of October. And then they wrap up their district schedule at Anson on November 1st and versus Olney at home on November 8th. So a good non-district schedule full of familiar foes, and then what should be another really fun district schedule with some teams that have been heavy hitters in the area in recent years.
Game of the year for Cisco. I think you and I are going to agree on this one. Given that this is a young Cisco football team, I'll let you go first. Game of the year, most important game for Cisco.
I think I'm going with Strict at Stanford. I think that's the game that'll kind of establish expectations for the rest of this district schedule. If they can knock off Stanford, who has a ton back and should be very good, that puts a district championship, within realistic kind of a scope. So we'll see. Obviously, then you have that Holly game there on the 25th. It could be huge as well. But that Stanford one, I think, is the one that kind of sets the tone for them.
All right, I'm maybe less optimistic for Cisco, this young Cisco team, than you are. I still view the most important game on Cisco's schedule as being a road date at Anson on week 10. They're going to be big underdogs against Holly and Stanford. We'll see what they bring to the table this year. I mean, I think that Cisco will take a step forward. I'm just not sure how big of a step just yet because of their youth. Um, the Anson game, by winning that, it pretty well locks up a playoff spot for the Lobos. So I'm just looking at it maybe a little more conservatively than you are. That's the most important one. If they can knock off Anson on the road, they're going to see postseason play again, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that Anson one is going to be a big game for them. If that could be the one that kind of decides whether they get the playoff spot, whether they're seated where they seated in the playoffs. And I do like the schedule because I think after you have Stanford and Holly right there in the first three games of district, and you have a chance, I think, to build some momentum. I think they're going to be a heavy favorite against TLCA. If you can win those last two games, you got a chance to go into the playoffs having won, at least three of your last four games, which could be a big deal.
All right. And with that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, the Cisco Lobos. But before we do that, we want to remind you, August 21st is the big day here at Big Country Preps. That's the day that we release a preseason preview for Big Country football. And it will have the most comprehensive look at Big Country football of any media source out there. We'll have previews for previews for each team. We'll have a player feature for every team as well. We'll have stats. We'll have standings. We'll have video. We'll have opinion pieces, photos. We'll have a ton of material. The biggest preview of Big Country football, really, that you're going to see.
And the biggest Big Country preview becomes even bigger this year as we are adding five new schools to our coverage area with Glen Rose, Mineral Wells, Graham, Toller, and Miles all joining the mix. So obviously we're excited to have those five in the area, and we hope you're excited to follow the coverage throughout the season, our coverage of those schools. In the meantime, we appreciate you joining us for this episode of our Countdown to Two-A-Days series. We hope you come back tomorrow. We will be previewing the Holly Bearcats here at BigCountryPreps.com.